Nostalgia can be a powerful thing. It can be wielded to revive decades-old franchises and ideas and give them new life. Of course, relying on nostalgia alone isn't enough. Developers need to find a way to keep the spirit of the original while also doing what they can to bring it to a new audience. New Pokémon Snap is the latest in the trend of bringing back 90s classics with a new coat of paint. And as someone who didn't own an N64 as a kid and has literally never played the original before, I decided I would give my opinion on how well this game executes on its fairly novel concept. So, I've got my camera and my car keys. Let's do this. To start, this game is by far the most gorgeous Pokemon game to date. Graphically speaking, this game does far more with the Switch hardware than Sword and Shield ever did, which is especially necessary in a game whose whole conceit is taking pictures of Pokemon. Pokemon are all so expressive and have a wide range of different animations that play when they're interacting with the world. Of course, something worth noting here is how exactly Bandai Namco managed to achieve this. The Pokemon series has had a problem for a while now, that being the problem of ever-increasing scope. To be completely fair, this is something that has plagued the series from the onset, but it really became apparent with the shift to 3D, reaching a boiling point in Sword and Shield. Essentially, the more Pokemon you have, the more models you need to make, texture, and animate. The problem then becomes that you have less time to touch up each individual creature, which can work okay if the focus of the experience is on the gameplay. However, that doesn't work when the focus is on the Pokemon themselves. New Pokemon Snap overcomes this by electing to limit the scope of the game. There are only 214 Pokemon in the entire game. By having less Pokemon, the developers are able to focus their efforts on making those Pokemon as detailed as possible. This is similar to how Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee were able to have unique following animations for all 153 available Pokemon. Because since they had less Pokemon to animate, they were able to put more effort into each one. Compare that to Sword and Shield's DLC, where the following mechanic feels almost like an afterthought, and doesn't feature much in terms of unique behavior. Another way this game's scope is limited is in the gameplay. Just like the original Pokemon Snap, the player does not freely explore the various environments, instead being strapped in for an on-rails experience. This again works to the game's benefit, as it allows the developers to put more effort into polishing a smaller range of environments. It also helps the player because they have less stuff to manage. The player gets some control over the speed of the car later in the game, but by and large, the gameplay is designed for the player to focus on taking pictures. The only real change that the game could benefit from is perhaps having the ability to stop briefly at certain points to take pictures instead of always being in motion. But I guess that's just part of the challenge. Also, I would like to add that Professor Mirror probably has the most sense out of any of the professors. Like, it's already weird how all of them enlist the unpaid labor of children to do their research for them, especially since they tend to lead these kids into dangerous, world-ending scenarios, but at least this guy has the decency to put the kid in an armored car so he doesn't get hurt. But still, maybe we shouldn't be sending little Timmy into a volcano to research dangerous fire-breathing monsters, or giving him one as a pet? Like, that's not an unreasonable request, right? Oh, who am I kidding? It's the world of Pokemon. It's just a rite of passage for these kids. No big deal. Now granted, this limiting of scope has some downsides as well. For starters, the game can feel a bit repetitive. Since each course is fixed, that means there isn't much new stuff to do here by replaying the same level. The only changes come when you level up a course, which often comes with new Pokemon and alternate routes in some cases. But that's still fairly limited, and you have to grind the same course over and over again in order to unlock these levels in the first place. The game does its best to give you some reason to replay courses, such as trying to get something you missed, like a flying Pokemon that goes by really fast, or experimenting with the different tools at your disposal, such as Fluffruit or Illumina Orbs, in order to see if you can elicit new behaviors from the various Pokemon. However, one of the parts of this game that just screams padding is the bizarre restriction of only allowing you to show one photo per species to the professor when there are 4 possible behaviors. This means that you could potentially get multiple photos of a Pokemon, each with different behaviors, but the game still forces you to pick one, meaning that to get every behavior for a Pokemon, you need to go through a course at least 4 times. There is literally no reason for this, and it only serves to artificially drag out the game. And I know, it's a bit of a minor grievance, but it's still a fairly glaring one for me and stuck out almost immediately. In terms of overall length, the game is fairly short. I got through the main story in about 7 hours. On average, the self-reported tracking site How Long to Beat lists the game as being about 10.5 hours, with a completionist run taking about 30. So it's still fairly short compared to a lot of other AAA games on the market, but there is still something for completionist types to chew on. Now lastly, let's talk about the game's story, if you even want to call it that. So Pokemon isn't known for its storytelling, at least in the main series, but in terms of Pokemon stories, even this doesn't have much going for it. The characters are all fairly one-note, and none of them really do anything besides offer commentary on what's going on.
Oh, really?
Although, even as someone who didn't play the original, I still appreciated Todd making an appearance. It just helps to tie the game back to the N64 version that much more. The added voice acting is a nice touch, and definitely is something that we could use more of in the future. Unfortunately, it's not used a whole lot here, instead being limited to just a few cutscenes throughout.
Now that you're all here, we can get started. Listen up, team. I'm going to give you a breakdown of the survey. Now then.
However, compared to the completely voiceless main series, it's still a welcome addition. In terms of lore, there isn't much development of the new Illumina Pokemon concept, and the game never really explores any of the other lore elements it introduces, and kind of just uses them to add more of an air of mystery to the Lental region without ever going in to explain them in any real depth. Which is a bit of a missed opportunity if you ask me, but it's really neither here nor there. To be fair though, the game doesn't really need a narrative all that much. The story more so exists as a formality to justify what you're doing. The Illumina Pokemon you photograph at the end of each island make for a fairly interesting spin on boss battles, and range from being fairly easy to complete to somewhat infuriating to get a good picture of. I had to repeat a few of these due to the game not really being super clear about what I needed to do, and I barely got another one just barely clipping the tail in frame. Ultimately though, I do appreciate how these bosses gave more attention to certain underappreciated Pokemon such as Meganium, who is still probably the worst pick for Johto, but at least it got some more love here. In short, the boss battles are a cool concept, but more could have been done to make what you needed to do in each of them just a little bit more clear. So overall, how does this game stack up? While it's not the best Pokemon spin-off, and it definitely took me a little bit of time to warm up to, I can say that I quite enjoyed my time with the game at the end. Yeah, there are a few minor quality of life improvements that could be made, but there is no denying that this is the most beautiful Pokemon game to date, and it really shows off the potential that the Nintendo Switch has for this franchise.